Today, AI said something that I think should be taken very seriously, and it's right here beside me on the screen. This is not a small effect in a rare subset. This could be a major pathophysiological consequence of mass repeated vaccination with immune escape variants. The public health implications are profound and deserve urgent attention. What am I talking about here? This is, as usual, about Embalmers clots. I never forget this topic because I've had such a long journey with it. For those people who don't know, I have first interviewed Tom Haviland. I had watched the videos I didn't even watch all of the videos in 2021. I'd kind of ignored it at the time, but eventually, because it kept on coming up, I thought if this is real and embalmers are seeing unusual clots, somebody needs to look at it. So I took the scientific perspective and interviewed Tom, who then produced the survey showing across the world that there were a significant proportion who had noticed these clots. So the first thing is that you then want to see, is this real? And it is real. And when we look at this from from Richard Hirschman, so he's an embalmer who has been speaking out about this even in 2021, and you can see that long 19-inch clot that he took out of somebody. So this is real. He's not made this up. He's shown it on multiple occasions, and he still finds them. So we know this occurs. Then for me personally, the next thing that happened was that I got contact from someone in a team on the other side of the world who said, I've seen some of those videos. I think that you can continue to raise awareness of this. I want to tell you that we are working quietly in the background to try and figure out exactly what they're composed of. So this was really important work. At the time, it was so serious that I recorded the video and kept it hidden because I was concerned about the implications of it. That's how seriously I took it, because I thought, oh my goodness, this is some frighteningly important information. Fine. That's not the end of it, because then after I spoke about that, then I get contact from a whistleblower who was in catheter labs and was seeing unusual fibrous clots. And he then gives me the images. And up to this day, I don't know who he is, but he got all the images. I couldn't corroborate it directly, but this is real. And he sent me multiple images like this. If you want to see the full interview, he didn't show his face, he just spoke. And he said exactly what he has been seeing. He's got multiple other pictures there. And so, from every angle, scientifically, I know this is real. And this is important. So, even discussing with the embalmers, trying to understand exactly how this fits together is difficult. And so, this is where it takes me to about where I am now, because there's so many people working in the background. Even Kevin McCarran, and who has been studying, looking at the embalmers clots, finding lots of amyloid in them, and all of these things are happening. And then for me, this morning, I had a breakthrough thought. Now, this is what I'm going to be talking about in the next few weeks. So you'll find a link in the description. I've already started to put together some of the slides because this is so important. But I think that I could have cracked through, and it's not on my own. It was really with me doing a lot of work at pushing, looking at the molecular mechanisms for severe COVID. And it was out of that research, using AI's tools to pull research together. I then saw something that connected to embalmers clots. So I wasn't even looking at embalmers clots this morning. This was just me doing my normal research, trying to understand mechanisms in severe COVID. Because if you don't understand severe COVID, how can you understand what's coming afterwards? So for me, it's an important piece of the research. So I then saw a link to a specific kind of immune cell that degrades hemoglobin. And as soon as I saw that, I knew this was very important. And it was because of some work that had been done previously. And I'm just giving you some insights. I'll cover this in more detail in the full presentation. But this is from some original work on the clots that had been done. And what they had found at the top, the highest concentration of protein is hemoglobin subunit beta, then fibrinogen beta, then hemoglobin subunit alpha. What is strange is that they are not in the same concentrations. I knew this was really important, but could never quite get the full explanation as to why, potentially until this morning. And hemoglobin is not normally part of a clot. And again, these things will be covered. A clot is usually red blood cells, and this is why it's red, not the white clot. So this is what a normal clot would look like. Red blood cells trapped in fibrin, and it's red, not white. And so when you look at that, you then realize that this is something very important. And this is what I said I stumbled into. And when I did that detailed analysis and then put the proteomics in, the whole thing fit like a glove. And so I knew this was very important. And so this is what I'm saying. Join me if you want to understand what is going on, because we'll have to go through the science. There are things like about netosis. This is critical, where it lays down these nets to trap things in it. Then you can get this formation. This was the original picture of my white clots with spike protein, hemoglobin, platelets, immune antibodies, all making this together. And so it's this pattern that has been happening and I've been putting together for a long time. And I've done this presentation, the ones that I'm showing some slides from, probably about 18 months ago, trying to explain the mechanisms. But the beauty about science is you keep on seeing more. You never stop looking. What is the standout in terms of the information is here with regards to the percentage composition by protein. And you can see here that the highest concentration from 4 cases that were submitted were hemoglobin subunit beta. And you can see that hemoglobin subunit alpha is at a significantly lower concentration. Now, this is important. And the reason why it's important, so just a quick jump through, because some of these slides I'll use in the main presentation, but just to jump through them quickly, this is a red blood cell, hemoglobin inside. This is what happens when a red blood cell gets destroyed. It binds to haptoglobulin, for the protein, and this is how it's grabbed. The haptoglobulin then gets into other immune cells to then break it back down. This is a normal process. And what happens in terms of the white clot seems to be the hemoglobin becomes free. Now, the reason it seems that there is a problem between the beta and the alpha, you can see here that some of the alpha gets degraded, leaving the beta, which is more stable. This then gets trapped and explains why you end up with this unusual pattern in a white clot. And so this is why I'm saying that when you go through the sequence, and this, when I did the whole sequence, because this is the end with regards to the white clot, but the associations in terms of there are specific genetic predispositions that need to be looked at that even I didn't see until this morning, that are extremely relevant to who would get these unusual clots. And the reality is that when I look at this, this is not going to disappear. I have a feeling that some people in the scientific community hope that as time would go by, this would just disappear and you'd forget about it. It's not going away. And there's a reason, is because it seems to be tied to the immune response and the way how the immune system is putting together this very strange pathology of breaking down red blood cells, breaking down hemoglobin, making it into a clot, happening very quickly within hours and days, which is why these patients will end up with the embalmers, because they will either have a massive clot that needs to be taken out by in a catheter lab, or they would die, which would mean that these massive clots then get picked up by the embalmer. And I just want to reassure people that for people who are worried, oh my goodness, do I have a massive clot in me? Trust me, you can't survive with the size of clots that are there. So this is definitely going to be an immune-mediated process that occurs relatively quickly and then causes either serious illness, needing a catheter lab to pull out a massive clot, or the person dies and they end up with being found with embalmers clots. So it's a process that is happening. And the way how I have it here already is that the necrosis with all of this forming one massive glump together with no red blood cells is why you will end up with mechanisms. The fact that it occurs is less important than the mechanism that it occurs with, because everything is on a spectrum. So for people who have massive clots, they get very unwell. And yes, some could die. That's one part of the problem. But then you have a spectrum of immune responses. And this is what I'll be looking at. What happens for those people where it's not as severe? How does the disease present? What needs to be done? Who is at risk? Why are they at risk? What can they do to mitigate that risk? All of these things have to be addressed. And so, just to close off and to remind you that in the description is a link for that Eventbrite presentation coming up in a few weeks. There's another one I'm doing in a few days about the impact of reinfection. It will tie into this one, so maybe you should see both. But here is the point. After I did the analysis and we went through all the mechanisms, I then asked AI the question about, okay, what is the connection with regards to elephants? And it gave me a standard answer. And so I pushed it. I said, hold on, that makes no sense. Take into consideration this, this, and this. And then it redid it and it said, I am extremely sorry. I was biased. It admitted the bias, that it was taught that it shouldn't think and say certain things. I'm telling you, this is scientifically frightening that this is built in as a bias. But once you understand how to get around these biases, you can get it to do the scientific analysis to therefore get to answers. And let me tell you, when I did that second analysis and made it look at it again, I said, look at it again. This is the data. This is likely to be what's going on. Look at it again. What do you think? And as a closeout, this is exactly what it said. I just copied and pasted it so you would see what AI did after probably a few hours of back and forth, looking at all the science, putting everything in. This is what it says. This is not a small effect in a rare subset. This could be a major pathophysiological consequence of mass repeated vaccination with immune escape variants. The public health implications are profound and deserve urgent attention. In case anybody who has the ability to address this, because this, I know Tom Haviland has pushed this all the way up to the FDA, CDC, they're still ignoring this. I am telling you that this is going to break the back of the scientific and medical community if we ignore it, because it's indicating, and as I said, you'll hear this in the presentation, because this work is not just about the clots. This came out of a completely separate bit of research looking at severe COVID-19 and the mechanisms. And what this indicates is that without a shadow of a doubt, it is not going to go away. Pretty serious stuff. And so, yes, please join me on the scientific journey. I so much appreciate all the people who have been working on this and who are publishing papers. One of the connections recently did a paper. I should probably look at it again soon. They're writing books. They are producing documents. They're sharing documents. So this is a global effort to get to the bottom of this, and we will find the answer. And the answers still need to be addressed in order for us to make a difference to the health of the population. Have a good evening. Look forward to sharing more science with you in the near future.